Well, the conversation has been going on. There are some things that have been said during break. We'll never put them on air, unfortunately. But just know that a lot is going on. We stay here. We want now to focus on what has been going on in the country. And you know that different political factions are taking different shapes. And we know that One Kenya Alliance, or is it National Super Alliance, is now has the member parties, partner parties, have resolved to exit and go their own separate ways. We know that three of them, that is ANC, Ford Kenya and Wiper, in One Kenya Alliance with the KANU, which is non-committal on whether it's going to exit from the Jubilee coalition or a coalition with the Jubilee. And also we know that the United Democratic Alliance, that is UDA, has been championing its campaign on the Hustler Nation, talking about the bottom-up economic model on how they are going to rejuvenate the economy and change matters as they are. We've heard from Raila Odinga saying that for him, he wants to promote the rural economy and have some reforms in the civil service for better service delivery. But you're asking the question, is there an agenda or it's just politics? Let's listen to some leaders that spoke yesterday at a funeral in Nyamira, the funeral of the wife of Timothy Bosire that was who was laid to rest yesterday.
Okay, wanasema ati ODM waingie kwa hiyo ni meli ndogo. Hiyo ni Datsun 1200. Tunataka tutengeneze meli ambaye hata hiyo oka anaingia ndani, Jubilee inaingia ndani, chama ndogo ndogo kama hiyo Osoro KNC yote wanaingia ndani. Ile mtu hawezi kuingia kwa hiyo meli peke yake ni UDA.
Tunataka sasa kuona chapter ya Nyanza, ya Western, ya Coast. Badala kuchukua watu wawili watatu watu wanakwenda kuzungumza hapa na pale. Sasa tutapeleka watu mengi. Alafu baadaye sasa itakuwa ni sauti ya Wakenya inaongea. Sauti ya mabadiliko inaongea.
The language we are speaking about bottom up and the language you are actually speaking about healthcare ya kijiji, they are almost the same. Ni vile nyinyi mmekuja tu baada ya kuzunguka kuuza BBI mkasahau kuisema mapema. Sasa baadaye after the ship has sunk, sasa ndio mmegundua haya. Now let's talk about the seriousness ya vitu zingine kama bottom up na healthcare.
Na sasa hii alikuwa anasema ndani ya BBI tuongeze hiyo pesa itoke 15% iende 35%. Mtu wa mashinani apate pesa. Osoro na wenzake wanasema no. Sasa hii wanakuja hapa wanasema ati sasa tuende bottom up.
And whether it is bottoms up or trickle down, you must know where you're getting the resources, because without savings and resources, you cannot empower anybody. So you've got to look for where do you get the money to empower. That is something they can never answer.
And I have to say that bottom-up is one of the things that have been pretty misquoted. You hear James Orengo, the senator, saying they're bottoms up. I believe it's bottom-up, and we'll be hearing shortly from the panelists here in studio. But Honorable Onyonka, so we understand that today there's a meeting of the One Kenya Alliance, yes. That is ANC, Ford Kenya and Wiper. And there appears, or it appears that KANU may not be joining you very soon because they are yet to exit their coalition. Yes. But also there's this talk that, yes, we are going our separate ways, but you're still inviting ODM to work with us. What is this?
It's true. I happen to be in the One Kenya Alliance because I am the deputy party leader of Ford Kenya. And we are in that arrangement. Basically, Sam, what's happening, I don't understand why people think it's big deal. For me, it's not big deal. What is happening is this is the season when different politicians and different people in our country are going to form alliances, get out of alliances, agree where they are going to play their politics come next year when the elections are going to be called. So the scenario that you've got, number one, is that honestly, NASA had to be collapsed. Legally, it had to be collapsed. Number two, of course, there have been disagreements in NASA for the simple reason that, one, there are some people within the NASA fraternity who felt that the team, NASA as a whole, the way it was crafted, had achieved its purpose. And that was to try and see whether we could have the presidency in the last elections. Then number two, there are people who feel within the core Kenya fraternity, I mean the One Kenya fraternity, which is that Prime Minister Raila moved on and he left us behind. And once he moved on and went and signed the agreement with Uhuru over the handshake, then it nearly left these other politicians nearly irrelevant, because even when it has been stated that they were also going to State House to meet the president and come up with engagements with him, the truth is people are now jostling, people are now organizing themselves so that at the end of it all, the way we know it, we may have a 2-horse race, we may end up having a 3-horse race. We may go for the main election and the winner will take with 50+1, or we may end up having 3 candidates or 4 candidates and there will eventually be a runoff. If that is the case, then there will be negotiations in front. What baffles me sometimes with our brothers in ODM is when I hear my very good friend Junet talk about, oh, we will not welcome so-and-so, will not welcome so-and-so. What happens when you find that in the next coming arrangement, and you, for example, if you had a runoff and you find that Deputy President has come with 38% and ODM has got the balance of that, and he'll find out that he's now going to sit down and negotiate with him. I saw it in the previous elections where everybody believed Uhuru would never negotiate with the Deputy President. I mean, everybody said it cannot happen. Sam, history has proved us wrong.
In 2013.
It happened. So when I hear politicians screaming and saying, so-and-so is the one we don't want. In fact, we are moving in our own direction and we are going, I look and say, what happened to our people? So in a way, for me, I think it's healthy for our democracy. For me, I think Kenyan politics is slowly going to start transforming itself. As I've said, we may have a 2-horse race, or we may have a 3-horse race.
So those horses, what are the sponsoring parties?
You may have one horse talking about bottom-up like now. You might have another horse, if it is Mzee Raila, who will be saying, I'm going to do something in the rural areas and changing.
That something is called devolution.
That's called devolution. He might say, my BBI collapsed because of the wars and fight that I've received from certain individuals, and you may have our side which is saying, is there a possibility we can take a middle ground approach? Okay. Where you look at some of the issues of bottom-up, if they make sense, and pick some of the issues of devolution and merge them and come up with the... this thing is a work in progress.
All right, I'll get to you, but let me first hear from Rosa. Why is ODM just thumping? Because if you listen to different leaders, if you're talking about Junet Mohammed, Edwin Sifuna, your SG, if you're talking about Pamela Odhiambo, who spoke over the weekend in Migori, there's this feeling that it's them that need us, not us who need them. What's going on?
I think you get ODM wrong. ODM does not chest thump. The difference between ODM and these other parties is that ODM faces the issues squarely and says it as it is. Other people will want to quote it, but quoting has never solved any problem and pushed anybody forward. If you want to tackle a problem, you face it and face it square. And that is what ODM is doing. Unfortunately, you didn't play on the video on Junet, but he went on, it's just not, he didn't stop at the person we don't want is UDA. No, he went on to say why. You didn't play it through. I watched it last night.
It's okay.
But what it is ODM states facts. We are not chest thumping. When it came to talking about sharing of the money, for example, that the members of OCA or the former members of NASA, the Wiper and the Ford Kenya were crying about, what ODM said was, look, in 2017, we eventually did not participate on the presidential election in the run-up. What has been calculated and given to us is based on the other positions of governors, of MPs, of MCAs, etc., of women reps, of senators, and that is what is giving us this amount. There is no way that Wiper and Ford Kenya participated in giving ODM those positions, because there are many instances where ODM competed against Wiper and against Ford Kenya to get those positions. So those positions were rightfully, I mean, the money that ODM got was rightfully out of ODM's struggle. But if it had been out of the presidential votes, then obviously Wiper and the other NASA members would have actually had a partake in it, because they actually participated in popularizing Honorable Raila as a presidential candidate. So what ODM was saying is, you've been our brothers. You've been crying about this money. Okay, let us give you something. You know? And when ODM comes out to say that, Probably that's what you think, they're chest stamping or looking
Sam,
arrogant.
can I
But
respond? Can I respond?
you will not respond as I speak, so I didn't
Just hold on, we need to
No, I'm
spread the
saying
conversation.
because
So,
Just hold on.
I like it when my friend is getting agitated, but we held our horses when he was talking. So it is not that we chest stamp. And what Osoro was saying, for example, that now because Osoro spoke before Junet and Osoro spoke before Wanga, what Osoro was saying is neither here nor there. Honorable Rahila has been credited as being the father of devolution. Devolution was passed in the 2010 constitution. So it is nothing new. What Raila is saying is, we've had devolution, we all agreed that it was going to work for Kenya, but there have been instances where probably it hasn't worked well. So let us look at those instances and strengthen devolution, because if we strengthen devolution, all our folks in the rural areas, which are less developed as compared to our urban areas, and where you find majority of Kenyans, all the folks in the rural areas, when we devolve 35%, for example, to the rural areas or to the counties, we will spur growth, and we will ensure that health, we'll ensure that water, we'll ensure that roads, we'll ensure that education, all those things will be of benefit to the people in the rural area. So
all right, I hear you. Let's listen to Honorable Raila Odinga as he spoke, because you listen to the different leaders in ODM, they say different things. Then here is the former Prime Minister.
Kisha kwamba hatuwezi kuungana tena. Hiyo NASA kazi yake ilikwisha. Lakini huko mbele tutakuja pamoja.
Formula iko tayari, ndugu zako wote wako pamoja kwa One Kenya Alliance. Tunaomba Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga uende uwashike mkono, uwaonyeshe mahali tutapata hii uongozi ili tusitaribu wakati.
Kwa hivyo tutakuwa tunajitanganya sisi wenyewe, tukisema sisi peke yetu Waluya, tukija pamoja tutapata rais wa nchi hii. Uongo.
All right. All right. Of course, I'm laughing because of what my director is saying. So you listen to them, and they are saying Alfred Ragoi appears to suggest that One Kenya Alliance is in its place, so it's Raila Odinga to come and join. Honorable Junet says that's a small house, unless it comes and joins us in forming something else. In the end, Kenyans are asking, what is in it for us?
Yes, exactly. And that's why you find this team that are speaking about alliances and tribal alliances and putting this tribe and that tribe in order to make a One Kenya Alliance that has certain people who have been in leadership for many years, so as to make something that's attractive to Kenyans, are way behind. The conversation has changed. If you remember, the conversation started with BBI, which was about positions for certain persons. And then after a while, they started talking about tribal coalitions. And then after a while, they started attacking the bottom-up economic model that is being championed by William Ruto. And then they did not give us their own alternative economic model. They simply threw dirt and words at the economic model that was being propagated. And right now, many people are beginning to talk about economy. When you hear Raila Odinga talking about the rural economy, he's now realized that the conversation in Kenya has shifted. Nobody wants to hear about tribal alliances or alliances between parties and that. They want to hear what is in it for Kenyans. How will it change their livelihoods? Hence the reason why the discussions on the bottom-up economic model has actually taken shape. And it's not a conversation in Kenya only. It's a conversation that is being made in America. You might have seen several days ago a tweet by Joe Biden where he said trickle-down economics has failed and the world is moving to a bottom-up economic model. This economic model that many of our opponents don't seem to understand, obviously they are not reading or keeping abreast with economic developments in the world. Harvard Business School is discussing it. All top business schools in the world are discussing it. It is being implemented in India, it's being implemented in Botswana, it's being implemented in America, it's being implemented in the UK. So this is a worldwide conversation. Right. If you listen to the latest TED Talks, that is all that people are talking about. And
we'll shortly get to the details. Allow me this, we'll get to the details. But Speaker Kagusha, I don't know if you want to disclose what your political position is this morning, because we know what the position for all the rest is.
We can tell. You can tell.
I think I like...
No, just hold on. I have not asked the question.
Yeah.
If you want, you can disclose your persuasion. But secondly, because every other time, yes, people will sell the agenda.
Yeah.
But most times, it's swallowed by the euphoria. The political and ethnic persuasions that may be. Will 2022 be any different? For those that say that we have to shift the conversation to the economy or to whatever other agenda it is.
It has shifted.
Do you think, just hold on, do you think it's going to be any different, or this will continue until the last minute when people have to vote and they vote on other persuasions but agenda?
You know, whether this bottom-up issue is just sloganeering, like some of the people have alleged, it seems to have caught us by surprise as a country. And I think Honorable Sholei put it correctly, that all the political, our political class now is busy discussing the bottom-up approach. And they're discussing it, some of them negatively, others positively. Of course, some of them attacking it. And why is it that it's being discussed by our politicians in every opportunity they get? It's because that sloganeering, so to say, has been sold to Kenyans, and Kenyans seem to have bought that issue of the economic model. I think this is the first time that Kenyans seem to actually psych themselves up so much to that issue of economics or an economic model that has been sold by a political party or by a politician. And give it to them, Kenyans. And I think that's where leadership is very important, because they seem to be receptive to ideas that are coming from politicians. And that approach seems to be different from what you have had before. And so I think what is going to happen, in order to stop the bottom-up approach by the Deputy President and his cohort, what has to be done by these other political parties is also to come up with the models. Eventually, they will have to come up with that. And so, as we are approaching 2022, what you will hear more is about those kind of models. And it is true, and I believe so, that the issue of the ethnic arithmetic might stop being very, very important. Why is it? Why is it so? If, for example, the Deputy President goes to Kisumu, and the people who are in the lower cadres seem to appreciate his economic model gospel or campaign or slogan, then it means you as a politician in Kisumu will also then have to come up with another model that will appeal to the same population. Because then they will not be appealing, they will not be supporting the Deputy President because he comes from a certain region.
Have you understood the model yourself?
The bottom-up?
Yeah.
I have also been studying. As you say, it's not a very simple thing. We are not used to economics. So someone is introducing a very, very hard stuff to all of us. I'm more of an art person than more of an economics person. But I have also been studying. I've also been trying to see what it is about.
The reason I'm asking you that, Speaker Kagusha, is because, look, if we are to speak here in English and the citizen at home does not understand what you're saying, in as much as they'll make a decision based on what we are saying, they don't understand it.
No, you see, what is happening is that the bottom-up approach seems to be campaigning for the lower cadre people to get empowered and to get the support from government and to get policies that favor them more so that they produce more and so that they are more economically empowered. And instead of looking at more from the top trickle-down effect that has been there before. Okay. So we are all studying that
Just
model.
hold on, Speaker Kagusha. Honorable Boss, let me try.
Sam, it's me. You are skipping me. And this is my pet. This is my pet.
Okay, it's because I'm getting okay.
Okay, let me go ahead, then you can have it. Yes.
Can
let me just explain
because this topic is hot at this moment. That is the bottom up, because I've had different versions of it here on set, and
but I also don't think there could be one definition that one would come and
Speaker Kagusha, just hold on. Yeah. So, Honorable Boss, do you know exactly how this will be achieved? Because yes, you're saying that it's an appeal to the hustlers to improve their way of life, improve how they do business, empower them more, improve their access to credit. Do you have an idea of how this will be done?
Economic development in any country is intended to improve the livelihoods of the people of that country. That is usually what every country wants to achieve. In the past, many countries had assumed the economic model of trickle-down, which meant that the country, its policies, its legislation, incentives by the government, tax breaks, certain benefits being given to big corporations so that they could spur employment and hence improve the livelihoods of the ordinary citizen. And they thought that that is what worked. And economies all over the world, from the time of Ronald Reagan and so on, that is the way they thought that they would spur economic development in the country. It has been found and studied that it does not work, because at the end of the day, you have very few people at the top who are wealthy and comfortable, and everybody else in poverty. So what has now changed is, instead, countries must move from that method to start investing at the lowest part of the pyramid. Their policies, their decision-making, the legislation, to be able to inject more investment at the lowest cadre in order to spur development. And when you do that, I know Rosa is trying to say that that can be cured by devolution. No, first of all, what you have to do is, if you have this majority of Kenyans, and in Kenya we say there's 16 million Kenyans in the informal sector, if you can spur economic growth at that level, in the informal sector, that informal sector will begin to pay taxes. And those taxes is what becomes revenue. And therefore, when you talk about devolution getting 35%, it will be 35% over huge revenue. So we are trying to build the revenue base in order to be able to support devolution. You cannot support devolution when you don't have a revenue base. In the past, the trickle-down economic system used to assume that if you support the big corporations, then the big corporations will be able to pay taxes, and therefore we would have a revenue base for the country to be able to be undertaken.
That's good, but I'll get back to you with how. Honorable Onyonka, so you hear this idea, you're putting together an alliance of One Kenya Alliance, probably you may end up working with ODM once again. What is the alternative? And what are the strong points of this proposal, or the weak points based on your analysis, and what's the alternative that you're offering Kenyans?
In the shortest time I can use, actually the economic models globally have not been only two. They've been trickled down, like she says. We've had what is called African socialism, which was introduced by Tomboy and Group after the sessional paper number 10 of 1961. We have had Ujamaa in Tanzania. It was a development model, where Nyerere felt that the only way you're going to manage the resources of your people is remove money from the mabwenyenyes, take it down to the village, create an environment which is free and available for any individual, any person to then build his own capacity and become capitalistic, and then it's a success story. You have had communism, which has been in China, which has been in Russia. The truth is, if you go to today's paper, the Standard, Sam, and that is page 8. One of the best brains we have in this country as an economist, Bill O'Carroll. If you go to down the first paragraph down there, where he actually talks about trickle-down economists, then he says, bottom-up also refers to devolution that considers development to be based primarily on maximum mobilization of a geographical area's natural, human, institutional resources to improve the well-being of its people. Actually, what Deputy President has done is take Raila's model.
Yes.
Where he has been, for how many years did it take for us to talk about devolution? Even the World Bank was against, even the IMF was against Kenya having devolution coming in. The resources were meant to go to the grassroots. How conveniently in Kenya that we forget that the resources which have been trickled down to the grassroots are close to 2 trillion shillings in the last 10 years since we got the new constitution. Then what happened? What happened is, then you took your country under Jubilee and got it into debt. 11 trillion shillings, that's where we are today. You cannot get people out of poverty when you've borrowed against your capacity. Then what has happened? We have now taken these resources which were supposed to be used to remove the people out of poverty. So even if you were to try and come up with some miracle of trying to solve the problem of poverty in this country, unless you stop spending on big projects where you take your kickbacks, you get 90 billion projects, which then you go and get your percentages. If you don't stop your corruption in our country, All right, I don't hear anybody talking about corruption when you're discussing trickle-down economics. Look at all the funds that were created in this country from 1974. Youth fund, women fund. How many people, old people, do we give money today to try and alleviate them from their poverty? We have refused to collapse this fund so that it becomes one fund, so that we can monitor how the money is being spent. The problem with Kenya is not trickle-down economics. The problem with our country is that the policies have been there. We have brought devolution. The funds have existed. We are supposed to be utilizing it. Look at what the county governments are doing. Mr. My brother, Kagusha. I'm sure Nyeri County, where you are the speaker, has received more than 80 billion. Let's go and visit and see what you've done with that money. So let us cut this nonsense of saying that trickle-down economics is all about we'll take money. Where are you going to get the money from?
Yes.
You're broke right now.
Sam, I want to give him a standing ovation. Am I allowed to stand?
They are broke. Then you are talking about how you are going to change this country, Sam. You are going to create wonderful. You are going to remove poverty. You are going to give free education, free medical services. Where?
Sam, I want to give him a standing ovation. You know what? He's just hit the nail on the head. You know what? This bottom up, what do you call it? Bottom down, bottom up, I don't know, whatever they call it. It's an empty slogan. It's an empty political slogan that is meant to hoodwink the people who are less fortunate in terms of being able to meet their monetary values or monetary obligations. So that they begin to feel that somebody is talking about them and somebody is concerned about them. When this bottom up started, it was supposed to be like a class thing, where it was the rich or the have and the haves against the have-nots or the have-nots against the haves. That's what it was meant to be. Then they realized that it was going to cause a war that they could not actually manage, because the people who are talking about bottom-up, whatever, were really the haves who had all the money, and now they were pretending that they're going to talk for the poor. When they realized that it wasn't working, they started coming up with the wheelbarrows. This is how we are going to make you rich, or to bring you to our level. We'll be giving you, dishing out things to you, like wheelbarrows, etc., so that you can now get better and get to our level. They realized that was not working, because as they were dishing out wheelbarrows, they were flying on, they were flying in planes. And people were watching and saying, this is where you want to get us to? So now they changed to this bottom up. If the Raila has done anything for this country, is that he's talked about unity, Raila's talked about infrastructure, and Raila's talked about devolution. And Raila brought this devolution, which we actually took up in 2010. What is this devolution supposed to do? Devolution is supposed to help spur growth at this bottom that these people are talking about, this bottom. Devolution is supposed to help spur growth there. How? By taking money to that bottom. When you take money to that bottom and answer all the questions on education, answer all the questions on agriculture, do whatever you need to do and provide water, you are actually freeing the people at the bottom whose daily struggles are to make ends meet in these key areas. When you free their time, you give them opportunity to actually spend time and focus on economic activities. So the only thing that's going to answer to that bottom up, bottom whatever you call it, is actually ensuring that you take more money to the bottom, which is what devolution seeks to do. And what shocks me, Sam, just let me finish. You cannot talk about the bottom-up approach and pretend to be worried about the bottom. And yet, when money is to be taken to that bottom, you come up and say no. When you want to increase the money that goes to the counties from 15% to 35%, the people who are talking about bottom, and empowering the bottom are the first ones to say no. How are they going to spur that growth at the bottom when they are fighting any money that can be increased to go to the bottom to fight those key areas? So this bottom thing is a slogan, and it's a slogan that's supposed to hoodwink the people who are relatively poor. But guess what?
Rosa, that's why you're here.
Sam, these people have actually realized that you cannot be telling us about bottom up, that you're going to bring better our lives, when you've been on that seat for the last 8 years. And all you've been doing is amassing wealth, and you've never come up with policies that affect us. And all of a sudden, during campaign time, now you want to come and say bottom up, when you had the power and you had the ability to change our lives and you didn't change those lives. So it's not going to work in 2020.
That's why I'm here to offer the alternative. Speaker Kagusha.
The alternative is strengthen devolution.
All right, I hear you.
Speaker
Kagusha, before I raise this question with you, Honorable Nyonka, you claimed that the public debt is now at 11 trillion shillings.
Absolutely.
I don't know how you're getting your figures, because according to the CBK, at the date of January 2021, it was 7.3 trillion shillings. Obviously, it could be higher between January and now, but 11 trillion.
I'll tell you, no, it is. I'll tell you why. Because we're going to borrow next.
And
Sam, I'm talking about
Sam.
No, Honorable Nyonka, I'm talking about the figures we have now.
Okay, it's 7 trillion. Are you comfortable that we borrowed 7 trillion in the last 5 years?
Let me take the question.
But Sam, I was personally very, very disappointed
that
when the National Assembly and the Senate did raise the ceiling to 9 million.
Yeah.
And I'm on record.
They're going to borrow again.
I'm on record criticizing the National Assembly and the Senate for having allowed the executive to borrow up to 9 trillion. You remember the debate that was there when the ceiling was being lifted? And I think the honorable members here, maybe in future they need to be a little bit more attentive and careful so that we don't get to that. But again, just to respond just a little maybe to what Honorable Rosa has said, I think the attitude which I see from the ODM, so to say, because it's not NASA now, and I want to say this with all due respect, is what has got the whole handshake fraternity to the position they are in now. You know, when the hustler notion came, or narrative came, it was dismissed and ignored. But you see, with time, it caught the force of inertia. It has become a movement with the people. And people have bought that idea. Now, the issue of the bottom up, which again seems to explain the hustler narrative further. Again, one dismisses at their own peril. And you know, the reason why we are debating it here and we are discussing it for this long is again because it has an impact. It has, you know, when Honorable Rosa says that it has failed, and that is why that brigade on that side is now going to the whole issue of the bottom up after the hustler narrative, I don't agree with that, because it seems to be gaining traction, even with the areas which are not necessarily supportive. You know, if you are to look at it ethnically, they are not supportive to the person who is propagating this narrative. And so I think what needs to be done is this other side need to sit down and come up with something which is also convincing. Because if you look at the people who are selling the bottom-up approach or model, they are not fighting devolution. They are not even saying that this is going to replace devolution. So when you keep on insisting on devolution against the bottom-up approach, you see, the common mwananchi will not buy that. They will buy more the bottom-up, because it is what seems to be selling to them. Because they're saying, even if money is going to the devolution, they still want that money to still be used in that bottom-up approach, and even in the counties.
That's why I'm asking this question. I mean, you refuse to tell me what your political position is, but that's fine. Now that you're talking about the bottom-up, how will resources be taken to the ground at a time that, just hold on, at the moment you have 3.6 trillion of a budget, and there are certain obligations, there are debts to be paid, there are votes that have been funded. How will this change in September 2023?
I'm not a proponent myself of the narrative. Maybe honorable.
No, I'm asking because you're talking about it.
I mean, you know what I'm explaining. what I'm explaining here, I was just explaining the attitude, and I'm explaining why the one side finds itself where it is, and the other side finds itself where it is.
All right.
And that approach.
All right. Let me then take the question to.
But let me just raise something.
Just hold on, Honorable Boss. Tafadhali. Honorable Boss. So, how will this be done? Where have you looked at how the budgeting is done, for instance, for this financial year, and seen that certain resources could go to entrenching the bottom-up approach come September 2022?
Remember, already the resources are available, except that the resources are being channeled to big corporations. For example, when there was a merger of the two banks, the National Treasury gave those banks a break of 300 million shillings in taxes that they were supposed to pay. So that money is available. We are saying rather than give tax breaks to those big corporations, let's instead get that money and put it at the informal sector and build the informal sector, because those people, if they are able to have economic growth, then they will be able to pay taxes, and then that way the country will grow. And let me give a very simple example so that you understand. And I'll give the example of Rivertex factory in Eldoret. Rivertex, the government has spent billions of shillings to make it a state-of-the-art factory to produce cotton fabric. And they are producing that good cotton fabric. Unfortunately, the people who have made money from that injection of money into Rivertex are either the people who supplied the machines or the people who are importing the cotton from other countries that is being used by Rivertex. What we could then say, instead of just funding Rivertex, let us also put in a little extra funds and fund persons in the coastal belt or in areas where cotton can grow, the smallholder farmers, and make sure that they're able to grow the cotton so that Rivertex can buy the cotton from them. What will happen? Yes, we will have a state factory that is able to pay taxes to the government, but we'll also have smallholder farmers who are able to make a living, but also who are able to make a living enough to be able to be taxpayers. So it's actually reapplying your resources in a more focused manner to the bottom of the pyramid, as opposed to only focusing on the big corporations. And we said that has been done for a long, long time.
So those resources,
and if you've done something so many times,
loans or what?
Sorry?
Those resources for the farmers will be in form of loans, or how will you do that?
Again, that's why I said it's got to be policies and legislation. For example, we had the subsidies for farmers. That was a deliberate legislation to try and spur economic growth in the agricultural sector. So yes, it's reapplying the same resources. We're not saying we're going to find resources from elsewhere. It is now reapplying the resources to ensure that it focuses on certain areas. And yes, in simple terms. And we said, for example, we have decriminalizing, trade. For example, you find that you have traders who have been and we can give the example. The small traders in River Road, Nyamakima, and those areas, they've been having a challenge recently because in the past what they used to do is someone would buy 400 telephones or 400 pieces of electronics, and they would fill one container with several other traders and bring the container into the country. So you didn't have to have enough capital to pay for an entire container yourself. Right now, the rules have changed and they're required to fill a container, and they are actually making losses. So you see, that is a deliberate regulation that has ended up killing the small trader. We are saying, let's move away from those type of regulations that kill the small trader.
But it has not been possible for you in the current parliament to make changes to
it's actually a conversation that is ongoing at the moment.
All right.
And they've actually made a petition. The small traders have filed a petition to Parliament, and we are trying to cure it. So yes, and also let me just say one more thing, because you allowed Rosa to be dramatic about the issue of the bottom-up economic model. And you see, it puts some of us in a very awkward position because when you are speaking in a dramatic manner and not going factually, and in fact, actually, I'm going to get Rosa to subscribe to the Harvard Business Review, because then she'll be more educated on this economic model that the whole country.
Okay, all right. I was actually waiting for you.
Bottoms up is not about.
No, just hold on.
Wait.
Sam, it's okay, Rosa. Rosa, you get a.
I wanted to say that today, Madam Sholei, you really made a wonderful example about Rivertex. I wish we had discussed this when Jubilee took over power. Because you are in Jubilee.
Yeah.
We tried.
Number two, every single economic policy initiative that has been around with Jubilee, look at the subsidy she's talking about. Beautiful. A wonderful idea. What did they do? They could add all the money which was supposed to buy fertilizer for the farmers. Yes. Now we can't grow maize. They have destroyed National Cereals and Produce Board. We can't have our own maize. So we have to import maize from Uganda and other places. Then you are talking about how big policies, big government projects, which I completely disagree with, because it creates economic development, doesn't create growth. Then what do you have, Sam? Now you have Jubilee agreeing with what we were telling them about BBI. We said the resources are there. You remember when Jubilee was saying how there are no resources, where you're going to get the 20%? We've always had the resources, Sam. The resources are always being either misappropriated, stolen, or misused.
Exactly.
All right. So for you to even sort out their problem of bottom-up, in fact, I would wish they could come up and say, number one, if you are going to be caught stealing public money, we'll bring back the death penalty. I will know they are serious.
Yes.
If you are going to come up and tell us that you are going to do A, B, C, D, this is what we'll do for us to achieve the bottom up. In other words, Sam, even the issues that she's raising about, now you have this other group which is now going all tribal. No, tribe doesn't know poverty. We only use tribe after we have gotten power. Then we consolidate our tribes. We employ our own tribes. We give them big position in this country. We take resources to our own tribes. If you look at this country for the last 10 years, look at the way resources have been distributed. The other day, I was so excited, Mr. Speaker, when Uhuru went to Kisumu and he counted the billions that have gone to Nyanza for the first time since 1963.
Yes.
For the first time, people of Nyanza were saying, oh my God, you mean we can get these resources? And yet what was happening? When Jubilee came into power, most things went to Central, others were going to Rift Valley. We were just watching. In fact, that's why I agree. That's why we said, let Raila go and have a handshake with Uhuru. Because now we are in the kitchen, not in the bedroom. Yeah. And we have messed it up in the kitchen. Now we are going to reconfigure it afresh so that we know this bottom-up thing. Okay. I really agree with you guys. Continue with it, but come and tell us how you will pay for it. Come and tell us how you are going to stop the corruption that will mess up your bottom-up. Come and tell us where the resources will come from, and we will have a wonderful country.
And will you come with an alternative? Or there's no need to come up with an alternative?
Okay, what is your economic model?
No.
What is your economic model, Rosa?
The alternative, you know what it is?
Raila is your economic model?
You can say what you want to say.
What about boss?
Like Ruto is the bottom. But what I want to say is this, Sam, you know, sometimes you look so far out when you just have the answer within you. The answer here is strengthen this devolution. It will answer to this bottom-up nonsense.
Wow.
Strengthen this devolution. How do you strengthen devolution? I do not need to go into detail on what Honorable Nyonka said, because he has really emphasized and explained what it is that affects devolution, corruption. So when you say that, oh, we don't have, but after all, you've been talking about 15%, but you've only been taking 3%. Yes, because you're chewing all the money up here. There's no more money to take down there. So strangle that corruption up here, and there'll be more money to be taken down there.
All right.
So support BBI on 35% going down to the
okay.
That will answer.
BBI
that will actually
Honorable boss,
you know, because that is the answer to this bottom-up thing.
Because you and I live in this country, we know that on 20th of August, that's when the Court of Appeal is expected to give its judgment on the BBI. But I want to take feedback.
More money to go down.
Guys, can I just take feedback? But first, Speaker Kagoshi wanted to close, and because it appears, even yesterday during the discussion, it appeared that corruption is the biggest issue and will fight or will defeat any model that any person comes up with in this country. Do you know what we can do as a country? Any concrete suggestions to deal with Dragon?
Yeah, we need to change our culture. And of course, we have to depart from this hypocritical approach that we have. You know, when we are all seated here and we are, of course, blaming each other, we know, for example, like Honorable Nyoka has said, the NASA side or the ODM side is now in the kitchen. And so whatever is needed to be done, they need to do it. Just like Honorable Sholei has been asked that you are also in Jubilee, what did you do at that time? The ODM side is also in the kitchen now. We ought to see the right thing being done, you know, so they need to also do the right thing so that we can change our culture and really be able to deal with the issue of the corruption.
Okay.
And really, we need to be very, very serious about legislation also, which also ensures that we put bottlenecks on those people who want to engage in corrupt ways. And not just rely on judiciary, you know, at the tail end to give us convictions, because sometimes they may not be able to do that because, of course, you know what we also do as Kenyans on the other side. But just my final comment on how the politics are playing out. I said it when I was here last time, that in 2022, we will have a two-horse race between Raila Odinga and William Ruto. And the third force that may come is only coming to do or to play a role post the first round of elections. But again, I also look at OCA as pretty weak as a coalition, because the only person...
Don't reopen that conversation, because now you make people want to respond.
That's very unfair to me.
Let's listen to the feedback. Edward Ndombi, you say the bottom-up economics is just devolution in disguise. Let them devolve more funds to counties. That's where the rural folks and informal sectors are. Barsite Boyd, do you understand trickle-down effect? If yes, then bottom-up is the opposite of that. Got it? Now, trickle-down failed when the over-empowered, over-pampered investors started siphoning money out of Kenya.
True.
Well, For Kango, there is nothing like bottom-up economic model. The only way is strengthening devolution by adopting the ward as the primary unit of accelerated development. That is the sure way of measuring and achieving faster development. P. Ambuka, devolution also needs bottom-up approach in the counties. What has been devolved to the counties has ended up in the pockets of the few at the county level, where the privileged few have continued to be rich at the expense of the poor. Koa Frederick, sympathy votes will not be on the ballot come 2022. The only thing that raises eyebrows are two things. First, is the president insecure with his deputy's trip to Uganda? Second, the DP has been leaving the country on private issues. Why just this trip to Uganda that he was stopped? Of course, Koa Frederick referring to our first topic. And such moves by the government could only serve to make the DP a more formidable candidate for the next year's elections. And Kenyans love a persecuted
Very true.
candidate.
That's what he's playing.
Honorable Boss,
Thank you.
sorry, Honorable Gladys Boss, Honorable Richard Ojonka,
Thank you, Sam.
Speaker Kagusha, and Honorable Rosa Buyu, thank you so much for making time for us. Don't stay away so much. We need to hear you more.
But we need
My name is Sam Gituko. Up next, she says that she needs a longer show. Willis Raburu is up next with Matters Social. Bye for now. Stay tuned. Bye.